Hello and welcome to the Pickle Boys General Podcast, where we will be discussing the top five headlines of these week's events.
That was disgraceful. That introduction is just horrific.
Hey, it was
Welcome,
my first one, okay?
welcome to our thousands of viewers. My name is Andres Larios, also known as Pickle_Andres.
I am Hugo, also known as Hugo.
And I, who am forced to introduce myself despite just the horrible introductions, am Wilfred.
Agreeing with Wilfred, my name is Lucas, and these have been horrible introductions.
Okay, so going on with that, I think we should give a general introduction of what this is, shouldn't we?
Yes, we should, Hugo. Yes, we should.
Why don't you go ahead and give an introduction, Andres?
Okay, so this podcast arose from the necessity to have cast hours. Yes, we are in the IB.
Okay, no, our own.
Initiative.
Our own, I don't know.
This was
initiative.
an initiative which arose from
Yes.
crisis. Around the world today, there is a global pandemic which is plaguing innocent people, old people, young people, everybody. This virus does not discriminate. And because of this virus, we are stuck at home. And we are forced to have online schooling. And because we are in the IB, we are forced to complete a certain amount of CAS activities, community activity, and service activities, which will help us graduate. If we don't do that, we will. If we don't do the CAS hours, we won't graduate with an IB diploma, which we really need to get into college.
It would have been a waste of 2
furthermore,
years.
Quarantine is
That
going
would-
to end.
Yes, Lucas.
So
Lucas, are you going
we
to?
are going to initiate this podcast and hopefully continue with it beyond the end of the quarantine, where we're basically going to be discussing the top five headlines of the week or day, depending on how usually we upload, and elaborating on them and giving our own personal analysis from the point of view of four teenage boys who don't know what is going on.
Okay, that's a good summary. I wouldn't say that we're going to do 5 headlines every single whatever amount of time we're going to do this. This is the first one, so I think we should keep it more general and just see how things progress.
This is more of a pilot episode to compare with
Yeah,
the TV
pilot
series.
episode.
So
Okay,
now,
so-
to continue. Oh yes, I'm sorry, Hugo. Are you going to say something?
No, I think you should continue with
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much. Now, to continue from what Andres was saying about the global pandemic, so the coronavirus disease, or otherwise known as SARS coronavirus disease number 2, which causes the disease COVID-19. Well, as we know, it's spreading worldwide. It's very dangerous, which is why today the president of the Republic of Panama, in which we all live in, of course, has announced that a total quarantine will now be taking place 24 hours a day. So, guys, what do you think of this news?
I think that's good.
When
I think that
when
I think
Okay,
we're
you
a
can go,
couple of
Hugo.
days too late.
this was established today, right?
yeah, it was
This was
announced
established today, an hour
that
ago.
it was gonna be 24 hours because originally it was gonna be between 5 p.m. to 5 a.m. But then they just did for 24 hours, which I agree with.
But it's
You know-
a very drastic measure, don't you think?
No,
I think this
No.
drastic measure was taken too late, and you guys
Yeah.
can talk.
Too late.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm
interesting.
I'm gonna put out a controversial opinion right there from the get go. I know I'm very
Oh,
famous
boy.
for my controversial opinions, but let
Oh,
me say
yes.
this. Well, think about the thing is this started in China and in Europe, right? Societies that I don't know China, but I know Europe is very different from here. Here in Latin America countries, there is the thing that not many people live from monthly to month salaries. Correct? There's many people that go out on the streets and need to earn a living
True.
from
True.
being a store vendor or something. But the thing is, if you maintain them quarantined and without being able to get income, without being like you don't give them the tools to earn money, there is a breaking point. There is a point in which families cannot sustain themselves, and sooner or later, people are going to be forced to go out there and face the virus, right?
What
So-
you okay?
What I'm saying is, unless in the next 2 to 3 months maximum, in my opinion, there comes a vaccine that reaches Panama, this is going to end by everybody going out on the street because they cannot sustain themselves anymore and basically getting infected and killing quite a bunch of people. So I think that instead of that, you should just get done with it and let people get infected. I know.
Well, I agree with your concern, Hugo, but I don't agree with your solution. I think we know that people dying overall is a horrible thing. As Obama once said during the Sandy Hook school shooting, even one death is too many deaths, and I stand by that. And although when the coronavirus was mostly prevalent in China and in Asia, I wasn't very concerned about it. And in fact, I would have stood by your point then. Once the issue comes closer to home, you start to realize that this problem isn't the fault of the people. This problem is the fault of the government and the institutions which have power over the government. There is a flaw in the Panamanian system and in the system of most of the countries in Latin America and in the United States. You can see that. And this problem will not be solved anytime soon. But I believe that the coronavirus hopefully will be an eye-opener to many of these people. And I think throughout the next 2 to 3 months, while we are in total quarantine, we are going to see a drastic increase in crime. We are going to see a drastic increase in poverty and in deaths. And it's not going to be a nice sight to see. But hopefully the people will rise up and will demand a change in the government.
I agree with your point on this. I also do agree with your point about that we're going to see an increase in poverty, but I think that we're only going to see a drastic increase or a major increase in crime rates. And not all, for example, if we take Panama, for example, specifically Panama City, I don't think that, for example, in Costa del Este, which is where the four of us live in, I don't think that we will see that much of a rise in crime. Yes, there's some crime rate in our area, but I don't think it's going to be as much. And that significant increase is going to be located in more neighborhoods, like, for example, Curundú, which there already is high activity of illegal activities. And I do agree with you that there are flaws in the government. And although there are these flaws, I think that also, as you said before, that they taken this measure too late. Because, for example, I'm going to take it back to my personal experience. When I used to live in Argentina in 2009, we had there was the virus going around, and the government didn't take good measures, and the people reacted poorly. They all went to the hospital at the same time, for example, and more people got infected. But what I saw with the coronavirus is that they learn from their mistakes. When the first cases began to appear, they already began to take precautions. They already began to close sites of large areas. And then, like a week or almost 2 weeks ago, they began to place quarantines, and they've been on lockdown, like full quarantine for more than a week, I'd say, if I remember correctly. So I do agree with you that it was taking measures and most of your points. But specifically the part of the crime rates, I only agree, but in certain areas. I don't think it's going to be a whole trend that we're going to see in all the places.
Well, that's actually very interesting that you mentioned that, Lucas. And to go back to one of your previous points, that you mentioned that you think that these preventative measures are effective, but they may have been implemented a bit too late. Now, what I actually think of this is that Panama's surprisingly done a pretty good job of containing the virus so far, despite having this very high amount of cases. I do think that compared to even European countries, which could be considered more developed than Panama, like Italy, for example, which right now I think is the epicenter of the virus worldwide, and it's numbering 900 deaths a day, something truly horrible. And actually, one of the reasons that that's actually happening is because they didn't implement measures early enough. And hopefully, with these seemingly extreme measures, we can prevent this.
I want to address something you said. You said that Panama was dealing very well with the virus. And yes, Panama does have a very low number of infected, so to say, for the days that it's been with the virus. But the thing is, I really don't trust anything that the Panamanian government puts out there as stats. Because the thing is, Panama, you were right that it's very low in resources compared to other European countries. So the truth is that they are not going to do as much tests. If someone gets infected, the chances that there is that they go down, they record them as one of the infected is much lesser. Take for example, we've all heard the statistics that it causes 3 to 4% deaths, right, per infected. That is in countries such as Italy and Spain. But in South Korea, where the government really took measures and tested literally such a large percentage of the population, even those who didn't present any symptoms, they lowered it down to decimals of a percentage of deaths per case. So I don't believe that Panama really dealt with it, such as that the numbers that appear on the newspapers cannot be truly trusted to their full extent.
Well, it's really interesting that you mentioned that, Hugo. Are you insinuating that the government can't be trusted, or are you just saying that they're hiding facts for the benefit of the people?
I'm not saying anything. I'm just it could be. I'm not going to say it couldn't be. I mean, do we?
Try to finish
Do we-
your thought.
Okay, thank you, Andres. Thank you, Pickle, Andres. Do we all believe that China has the thing controlled? Because that's what they say. Do all of you believe that?
Well, at this point, I think
At this point, for sure, but not beforehand.
I agree with Andres. This morning,
And I don't think they. I think they really lied about the numbers, but now they have it under control for sure.
Okay.
well, this is
Hugo,
it's
do you
interesting you mentioned this. Yes, Lucas, go ahead.
Hugo, do you mistrust and don't confide in the Panamanian government specifically, or does it also apply to other governments?
Oh, it applies to all the governments. I think the only true government that did this correctly was South Korea. I truly do. The rest of the governments did a meh job.
So, what do you think the Chinese government
in Latin America actually, we're living in a very good place right now, because the fact that Panama has recorded the more cases per capita than any other Latin American country could also be a false statistic, or it could be showing something that we're not expecting from the statistic, because the fact that we have recorded more cases in this country doesn't mean that the per capita, of course, not in general, shows that Panamanian authorities are actually getting to the bottom of this, and Panamanian authorities and health officials are getting to the bottom of this and finding people who are presenting symptoms, and they're putting them in quarantine, and they're starting to implement different very restrictive laws, which would really help enforce quarantine and lower the amount of risk for all of these citizens who are very vulnerable. So although per capita there are more people who have the virus in Panama than in any other country in Latin America, this is showing how effective the data collection is here, and how, because of this, Panama is actually doing a lot better than a lot of the European countries who failed to take measures and failed to protect their people.
I actually do agree with Andres. I do consider that the fact that there's more reported cases in Panama, or at least confirmed cases, simply means that the Panamanian government is dispensing more tests, and, as Andres so eloquently put it, getting to the bottom of this. Now, the other governments, for example, Brazil's government, I think Brazil is the most cases in all of Latin America from the Johns Hopkins disease spread map. And Of course, Brazil has a massively larger population than Panama, so that could explain. But the fact that Panama is so close to Brazil in terms of cases simply means that Panama is doing, I even dare to say that, good of a job. And in relation to Hugo's point about the Chinese government, and if really it's getting better, I would hope it's getting better, especially since this morning I read an article in the BBC which said that the quarantine in the city of Wuhan, in which the virus originated, is actually being, or the lockdown, sorry, is actually being removed soon. I can't remember specifically, but it's being removed quite soon. And this hopefully is a sign of improvement. And that, for example, and I actually would like to bring up, let's say, the global economy or the stock market. So, what do you guys think about this immense downturn that the global economy has faced?
Well, what else is to be expected? If businesses aren't working, of course, stock markets are going to crash. I'm not sure. Is it as bad as 2008 right now?
No,
I haven't read too much about it.
it is headed in that direction though,
Yeah, it's
because
getting there.
we've had the stock market has been going up and down, which is always a very bad sign, and has mostly been going down. But today it had its biggest surge of 2,100 points.
Yeah.
But we don't know how long that will last, because the stock market has kept surging, but that has mostly been for like safety buys of different stocks to prevent different measures, or people are selling at a lower price just to stay alive, you know.
And before we continue with this podcast, we'd just like to inform our listeners, our faithful thousands of listeners, of an important PSA. So, guys, keep in mind, as the government of Panama has said so many times, hashtag quédate en casa, hashtag stay at home. So please don't spread the virus, and of course, wash your hands. Use hand sanitizer as much as possible. If you come in contact with something that may not be clean, just wash your hands. And if you can't wash your hands at the moment, please use hand sanitizer. It's for the betterment of everyone.
Wilfred is doing his patriotic duty right now.
Oh yes.
I haven't left my house in 2 weeks, so I don't think I could have touched anything.
I only
Neither
leave
have I.
I only leave my house if I have to walk my dog. That's all.
Yeah, exactly.
I've left
I
once
also.
in a drive. That's it. I didn't even go out of the car.
Okay. Well,
What a simple.
Okay.
well, thank you, Andres, for that amazing word in terminology. And actually, in terms of these new words and new terminologies, I've heard that the Zoomers are at it again. So recently in the BBC, actually, and also in CNN, I read two articles that truly shook me to the core. I read that in Florida, in Miami Beach, actually, these seniors, college freshmen, I think college students actually, were going out to Miami Beach and just enjoying spring break. And when interviewed by one of the reporters, they said, and I quote, I'd rather die than not enjoy spring break. Truly shocking to what length the madness of these Zoomers can come to. What do you
I
guys
really
think
want to
about
build
this?
up from that. I really want to build up from that because
Go
I
ahead,
was
go
talking to our friend and our classmate Julian the other day
Yes.
through Instagram, right? Because he posted a story of him in Cocle, which is a small city in close to Panama City,
It is in fact a province.
in which he was outside his house, and I said, "Hey, man, you shouldn't be outside his house, outside your house." And his counter response to my me calling out to him was that nobody was going to take his dignity, first of all, and second of all, he said that Colono still at that time wasn't infected, so there was no danger. So I didn't respond back to that because I didn't want to. It wasn't worth it. But technically, that makes it even worse if you're going to a non-infected area from an infected area, that's how disease spreads, right? That's how
Yes,
it got to
indeed.
Cologne, probably. Not him, but from someone going to Cologne because it was not infected.
Yes, Ugo, you're completely right. And the fact is that a lot of the transmission, a lot of the reason why this has become a global pandemic is because so many people refuse to stop traveling. They're like, oh, I don't have the symptoms, because the symptoms usually kick in after 14 days of transmission. So they go on their world tour and they end up infecting everybody in a 5-foot radius of them. So, obviously, the preventative measures, and you can see that all around the world, especially in the United States, where a bunch of senators had a meeting with Dr. Fauci, who is now in charge of dealing with this virus in the United States, and said that the United States was ready to fight a global pandemic, which it clearly is not ready to fight, as you can see in the latest news reports. And people have been, well, for the past couple months, have been free to do whatever they want, and that is how this virus has been transmitted and has become such a global issue.
Speaking about the US, today I was seeing today in Politico, and I came across this article that talked about some interviews that were done to President Trump. And he was talking basically about he didn't want the cure of this pandemic, which is social isolation mainly, to be worse than the disease itself. And that actually reminds me a lot to what Hugo was speaking at the beginning of our discussion, which he basically was saying, and he even said at one point that our country wasn't built to be shut down. And he, as Hugo has been saying, was did a bunch of claims without any factual evidence. He said that by shutting businesses down, the economy was gonna die, and then it could result in more deaths. And he said that we can have social distancing still by being around each other.
I agree with Trump.
Hygiene. And I do see his point, but I sometimes feel that he's not acknowledging the severity of the situation, and that although yes, the economy is a very important thing that all governments should look at, and it's something that we need to address because we're heading, as Andres said, we're heading to that direction of 2008. We also have to take into considerations and not diminish the severity of the situation, because if, as Andres said at the start, one death is too many deaths, and we cannot keep on diminishing the importance and severity again of the situation, because we've seen the extent that it can go to, and although there's many backlashes, if we need to have quarantine, we need to have social distancing, we have to do it.
And so the first iteration of the Pickle Boys podcast, as we are calling it, comes to an end. I am very sorry that we had to cut the podcast by half due to some technical difficulties, but anyways, I really hope that you have enjoyed and will be there for our second podcast that should be coming shortly.